to maybe tell your audience that you're trans, and because of that, it impacts your review, because otherwise you're probably not giving the full picture as to how you got to the conclusion of a 9 out of 10 for Dragon Age the Veilguard. What's going on, guys? IGN has been caught red-handed trying to walk back their original 9 out of 10 review by posting another article about it and how the game might be a little bit misunderstood, and the way the story arc goes, it doesn't even reference the Veilguard at all, and, you know, maybe the storyline itself is just not really working with the original Dragon Age games and it could have implemented them better, and all these other things. But don't worry, the game's still a 9 out of 10 on our site, but we just want to let you know about all these issues with it where it's really not a 9 out of 10. The full article breaking down how Dragon Age the Veilguard on IGN is being walked back from the original 9 out of 10 score to, I don't know, an IGN 7. As BioWare's Dragon Age the Veilguard drunkenly stumbles its way into the spotlight, it's becoming painfully clear that IGN's initial glowing review of the 9 out of 10 that they gave it was criticized by many people, including myself, as more of a marketing ploy than any kind of honest assessment of a game. And as is often the case, IGN appeared a little too eager to help boost the game get the early praise it needed to try to get started on the right foot, purposefully giving the game to their own reviewer who conveniently identifies as a non-binary person, which, to me, I gotta be honest, when you start doing stuff like this, sure, you're welcome to do it, but I'm also welcome to think that you have severe mental issues. This is not normal. This is a problem that you need to try to address in your own world. It's not a problem that you can project onto other people. But regardless of that, IGN employs this person, and I know there's already going to be people saying, why are you even talking about IGN? Who cares? They're irrelevant. Look, I'm talking about IGN because I find it absolutely hysterical about how hypocritical they really are. This is the perfect example for it, and I have to shine spotlights on this to prove exactly why mainstream media is dead, and we are the new media. It seems like everyone that falls into the game industry ends up being trans or eventually identifying as that just to be able to keep their job in it. It's kind of like the theory Hypnotic always goes with like how this DEI is implemented and injected into the game studios, that anyone who's just a white male does not have a job very long unless they start identifying as something else. Let's take, for example, TJ Haffer, who is the reviewer of Dragon Age the Veilguard on IGN. Oh, wait, did I say TJ Haffer? I meant Liana Haffer. Because, of course, someone who identifies as a chick who used to be a dude is going to resonate very well with a game that pushes ideologies of trans on people. It kind of makes sense. But don't you think you'd want to disclose that bias right off the bat instead of just giving it a praising review and telling everyone this game is going to resonate with everyone? When clearly, it's just for you. Why do this, though? Access media, my friends, out of sheer loyalty to their longtime partners at BioWare. But now, even IGN themselves can't ignore the game's glaring flaws, and they're slowly beginning to shift their tone from Liana's review to what it actually deserved. Not so subtly hinting that the Veilguard sales numbers are actually as abysmal as the game itself, and that's something I talked about. Enter Matt Purslow, the latest article from IGN, who said Dragon Age the Veilguard is at war with itself, trapped in an action game with no interest in the past. And this is how they do it, by the way. They give it to who they know is going to give it a great score for the access media, which, by the way, Gamergate 2, this is the problem. They are purposefully making the score higher by giving it to someone they know loves this stuff, know is trans, and know the game injects the ideologies from the trans director at BioWare, Corinne Bush, so they knew going into it that if they wanted to continue to get access to these major AAA titles and get the early insider information, get the interviews, get the access media that they need, they could subtly nudge the score in a direction that would behoove these developers to think, IGN is on our good side. We're going to work with them moving forward and give them insider access, early information, and let them be the bearer of the information so that the advertisers go to them first because they're the ones with the information, and that's how the world works. But now that a couple weeks have passed and the reviews are out there from the actual gamers and people are expressing their frustrations across the board about how this game is pushing woke, DEI-injected ideologies, pushing trans agendas, these weird things that they're forcing on players, making you use pronouns, making you accept it, and not giving you any kind of choice to reject it, is a major issue with the game that gets glossed over by people that want it in the game. That's the problem with all of this. So when IGN starts to walk it back with their latest article, it's just them saying, hey, you're not allowed to criticize IGN because it's a different writer and it's a different opinion. So you can't come at us saying we're walking it back because we have different writers that write stuff all the time and people have different opinions. But it's how they go about giving the access that's the problem. Matt Purcell's latest article, titled Dragon Age: The Veilguard is at War with Itself, reveals the serious cracks in the game's foundation that shouldn't have been overlooked initially, while also carefully avoiding any kind of harsher criticism that us fans have been shouting from the rooftops, because behind all the fluff, there is a strong acknowledgement that The Veilguard is an awkward, conflicted game, one that's torn between trying to please longtime fans while also catering to a new audience, a shallow, action-based approach that feels injected instead of comfortable. And IGN tiptoes through the tulips around this game's core issues, and just reading through the article, it's beyond evident that they're preparing to distance themselves from the very game that they once hyped as a potential Game of the Year candidate. And let's be honest, will still be considered for Game of the Year because that's what Game of the Year does. They always try to push the woke ideologies and ignore what gamers actually care about. Because ultimately, when it comes to the Game Awards and the entire game industry in general, especially when it's AAA, it's not about the game and the greatness. It's about the game, the agenda, the ideology, and most importantly, the message that the game pushes. In walking back the initial 9 out of 10 score they gave it, IGN's latest article focuses heavily on the absurdity of the name change, noting that not a single character in the game's 100-hour-long runtime ever mentions the term Veilguard. And that's just wild to me. It's a last-minute branding pivot that directly reflects the game's chaotic development cycle that lasted nearly a decade, where initially the game was going to be called The Dreadwolf and focus on the rich story elements within that. But no, at the very last second, it feels like BioWare decided to change all of that, shoehorn a bunch of information in, push their ideologies, and say, let's call it the Veilguard. Yeah, let's go with that because that sounds cool. It's painfully obvious that IGN is beginning to shift their stance on the Veilguard as the game's poor reception from actual gamers becomes so much harder to ignore in all of this. Their recent article carefully critiques the game while glossing over the very deep flaws that are in it fundamentally, as if hedging their bets to avoid fully endorsing a game that's quickly shaping up to be a massive commercial flop. I mean, at this point, it's standard practice for IGN, which frequently scores games higher on release to maintain favorable relationships with the publishers, only to try to recalibrate their opinions later once the actual public sentiment sets in and it becomes undeniable and they have to try to align with the actual consumers that are playing the game. And it's something I talked about